Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on how to conduct public record searches using the Copyright Public Record System. My name is Alicia Morris, and I work in the Public Information Education Office. I'm a host of today's webinar. Before we start, I'd like to share a few logistical announcements with you. During the webinar, you will be able to submit questions using a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will answer these questions after the presentation is complete. However, we may not be able to get to all of them. And since this session is being recorded, please note that if you choose to participate and your question is addressed, it will be included in the recording as part of this webinar. I would also like to encourage you to complete the survey that will pop up on your screen after the webinar is complete. The results will help us to improve our future webinars. And now I would like to welcome our first presenter, Denise Wolford, Assistant Registrar and Director of the Office of Copyright Records. Hello, Denise.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be presenting today along with Sean Gallagher, the product owner for the new Copyright Public Record System, or CPRS is acronym. Just a few months ago, in late June, the Copyright Office announced CPRS as the replacement system for the 18-year-old online catalog. This exciting milestone was yet another significant step forward in the office's current modernization effort to transform both our external services and internal workflows with a unified, consolidated group of software modules being developed under the new enterprise copyright system that the office refers to as ECS. ECS seeks to make all of the office's services digital, interconnected, searchable, and easy to navigate. In the chat, there is a link where you can read more about ECS and the office's work to continuously develop our technology systems. If you've attended any of our previous webinars on CPRS, you know that they were focused on helping you understand how to use and navigate the new system. The webinar support team will provide links in the chat to all the previous webinars. You should copy the links and review them at your leisure. These will serve as a great resource to you. They include demos and step-by-step walkthroughs of the system's simple and advanced search capabilities. The webinar today is geared towards users who are already familiar with using the Copyright Public Record System. Although if you happen to be a first-time user of the system, you will still get a lot of great information out of today's webinar. Now, some of you may be asking, why does CPRS matter? Beyond the three high-level strategic goals you see on the screen, there are broader impacts of the system. First, the Copyright Office exists in an ecosystem where copyright transactions are a large and economically significant portion of the nation's gross domestic product. Secondly, the Copyright Office's public records created through the registration and recordation systems result in public records of copyright ownership that serve both users of these copyrighted works and copyright owners themselves. A robust public record of copyright ownership and status is essential to facilitating an efficient and effective copyright marketplace. It encourages the development of innovative business models and monetary streams that rely on information about copyrighted works still under protection or those works that are no longer under copyright protection. With the development of a modern system, the office is seeking to create the best possible copyright record to enhance our public data, to streamline access to all copyright records, and provide these records in one consolidated system. Historically, portions of indexed copyright registration and recordation data, starting from 1978, were the only records available online. But now the office is gradually expanding online access to include older records dating back to 1870, as well as new data elements and linking other supporting records previously only available by request or visiting our Washington, D.C. Copyright Public Reading Room. In the months since CPRS went into production, the team has continued to improve the system based on public feedback. I know you will find today's presentation informative, and I encourage you to continue to share your input with us. I'll now hand the mic over to Sean Gallagher, who will be speaking to you about what's new in CPRS since the go live in June. Sean will also provide some advanced search examples to help guide your public searches in the system and share highlights from our survey feedback. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate the introduction and welcome everyone. So while CPRS, the Copyright Public Record System, has been available to the public since late 2020, as Denise mentioned, that transition this year on June 23rd definitely brought the most attention that we've had to the website. Since that transition, we've seen about a 10 times increase in the number of page views and about a six-fold increase in the number of unique visitors. We are seeing over a million, actually over 2 million page views now per month, which is consistent with what we were seeing in the previous public record system. So since that release in June 23rd, we had a software release earlier this month on September 3rd. And I just wanted to update you with some of the changes that we've made based on some of the survey feedback that we saw, and we'll again get into that survey feedback in a few slides from now. So we shifted our simple search, which you're seeing an example of that here on this slide, from an or to an and. So when we initially released the system, if you had multiple search terms in that search field, we were using an or, which was resulting in a lot of results for some searches and some search results that seemed inconsistent with expectations. We've since replaced that with an and function, which should help limit the number of results and also get you much closer to the records that you're searching for. This is very similar to an all of these search feature that we've heard people asking for in the survey, and should also address that survey feedback that people were seeing too many results. In addition to that, we've added the previous registration statement, as well as the title of works, to our search indices. And we'll show these in the demo in just a moment. Previous registration statements sometimes contain an additional linked registration. So that is now searchable from our simple search bar. And the title of works contains titles of songs within albums, for example, that may not be the main title of the application, but may be the most popular one that you're looking for. So that hopefully will address some of the issues where people were not finding the records that they were expecting to see in the search. We've also grouped some of the names with diacritic variations to put those right next to each other in our name directory, and we'll show an example of that as well. And we've also fixed a bug that we had with a multi-line advanced search. So if you had multiple terms in an advanced search, you weren't able to share that website link, and that also likely resulted in some of the errors that folks were having when they tried to go back to their search results from within a single detailed record view. And we'll show that again as well. There were a few records that were missing their corrections and amplifications, so we've rectified that and made sure that those were visible again to the public. And we've also updated some of the recorded document subtypes to cut down on the number of unspecified records. So give me 1 second, we'll switch over to laptop and I'll be able to show you what we were talking about. So here we are on our homepage. And so first of all, just using that kind of classic example that we use on our help page for the and, so we're going to go with Indiana Jones. So before, this search would result in, I think, more than 50,000 records because it was searching for Indiana or Jones. So now that implicit search has changed to Indiana and Jones. So you will notice that we have a Jones here, but no Indiana. And then we may have a couple of Indianas here as well without the Jones right down here. So it's searching for those two words together. So they may not be necessarily as a phrase, but they will both be in the records themselves. If you'd like to bundle something up as a phrase, we'll touch on this a little bit later, but you can just put quotes around that search term and that should narrow down your results to about those 650 or so that have Indiana Jones next to each other. So we also mentioned the previous registration. So if we take a quick look at that search, we've searched for this registration number in our keyword search, and you'll see that the system has normalized it to find that registration number, but we also have a later registration. So let's take a look into this detailed record view. And when this renders, we will see that this is the previous registration statement, and it has identified the registration number as it appears on the certificate. So when you're doing that search from the simple search bar, if you're searching for a copyright number, whether it's either the registration number or a previous registration, that should appear in your search results now. We also had an example of a title not showing up. So we will use this one example that was pointed out to me. So searching for this title, polyhedral space, we do see that polyhedral is included in this result as well. You also see space there, but then this third result was not originally showing up in our search results. So let's take a look in here, and we'll see that the title of the claim is works published on the album Axis Aligned, but down here in the title of works, we do have polyhedral space. So that title search was locating this phrase now within the title of works. So that's now indexed in our title search, both on simple and advanced search. So if you're looking for the title of a work that's nested within a larger claim, it should be much easier to find now. We go to our name directory, and we're going to do a quick search for a name that we know has some diacritics, and I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit to make it a little bit easier to see. So we have these three variations of Gustav Gluck, two with diacritics and one without. Previously, the entries with diacritics were at the end of that alphabetized list for the results for Gluck. Now they're aligned exactly with that spelling that does not have the diacritics. So if you're not sure if the name was indexed with or without any diacritic variants, hopefully that will be easier to discern now in the name directory. We'll back this out and we'll do a quick advanced search to show the next example. So if we're looking for a multi-line here that both contains love and peace in the title. We previously had challenges reproducing these search results from this link. And so what would happen is if you went in to look at the detailed record view, and then you wanted to go back using the back button or using the advanced search link here, you would be brought to the advanced search, but your terms would not repopulate, nor would your results. We've since rectified that, and you'll also notice that that same functionality should work if you go to your recent searches page. Clicking from here, this is pulling that same link for the advanced search. It repopulates your terms and the search results. And now I think we just wanted to show briefly that we are surfacing both the amplifications and corrections explained in the detailed record view. So that additional information should be visible in those records where it was missing. And lastly, if we are searching through all of our results, I'd mentioned the recorded documents. We'll try to filter this by the recorded document types. And then we'll notice that our unspecified is still at about 1 million records in here right now. It was up at about 6 million previously. So the recordation team did a great job in helping us classify a lot of these recorded document types that previously did not have classifications to cut down that number to make the search results a little bit more effective. So I think moving on to some of our search scenarios. Our keyword searches do include the ability to search for registration numbers, standardized numbers such as ISBN or ISSN numbers. You can also put names, the individuals or organizations. You can put titles of works in there. So that's definitely the best place to start off with a search if you're not exactly sure and you want to cast the broadest net to get the most results possible, and then use the facets and filters to narrow down from there. The title search is for titles of works. So that will cover, the title of a poem, the title of a movie, uh, title of a book, any of those types of items. The name search will be a name of an individual or an organization associated with the copyright, likely as a claimant or as a party to one of the recorded documents, or if the information is provided, an authorship claim as well. So again, the names are for names of individuals or organizations, not the name of the book, just to make sure that everyone is clear about those terms that we use on our simple search for keyword, title, and name. We also did want to point out that the advanced search pre-filtering presents all the possible options. Some of those options are incompatible with each other. So if you pre-select for a registration and then you're also filtering by wills, which is a type of recorded document, no matter what you search, you are going to get 0 search results. So please just be aware that if you're using any of the pre-filtering capabilities on the advanced search, that not all of the options that are available to you are compatible with each other and our records. And then lastly, the advanced search Booleans, we do have those and, nor, or, and not options in our advanced search that you can make use of to help you tailor your search results. And so I think, again, we'll just do a quick run through with that. And so if we're searching for a registration number, I can use this keyword here, or if I'm on the home page, I can paste this in. And even though it's a slightly different format that you may see on your registration certificate, it should find the normalized version of that registration number. Similarly, we can enter a standardized number, and although that's not on one of the main fields that's returned, we will see that that is an ISBN that's associated with the record. Quick example of a name search, we can do Nnedi Okorafor. She was just recently on the National Book Festival. And so searching for that name, first name, last name, we'll find her listed in many of the claimant fields on these results. And again, that's names of individuals and organizations. If we're looking for the title of a work, we want to choose the title field, and then we can do a search from there for Leviathan Wakes. And I believe James S.A. Corey was also at the book festival up on stage giving a brief interview. We'd also talked about those pre-filters. So again, if we're looking at a pre-filter of registration, and we also, are looking for assignments, and we know that love is a very common term in our copyright records. If you have these two facets here, you're not going to get any search results because there is no crossover. However, if we deselect the registration, we will find quite a few assignments of copyright ownership that do meet that criteria. Same thing with registration. If we take this chip out and refilter by registrations, we'll see quite a number of those as well. So just to be aware of those pre-filtering options. And then lastly, I think we're just looking at some of these Booleans. So if we're looking at this example and look at Wakanda Forever also in the title and see how many results we can get there. And again, it treats these terms just as if they had quotes around them. Okay, and then I think back to our slides, we do have a few wildcards. So this did come up as a request in our survey. So we just wanted to show how some of the wildcards we are implementing function. We already showed those quotes around the phrase term for Indiana Jones. And then we have the asterisks that we can use for truncation. So placing this at the end of a search term, we'll find variants that have anything after the characters you've inserted as a search. And again, we can demo that live really quickly here. Clear these out, we'll go back home. So we already showed the Indiana Jones example, but if we do this photo, we'll see what our search results look like. So we're getting photo play, photographic, photostat, photographs. So again, you can see anything that is a term that has more characters after PHOTO will appear. We do have another functional wildcard right now that we can show briefly. If you use a question mark, that's a stand-in for a single character. So if I do this search for question mark OSE, we're going to get results that have rows, results that have nose, as we see down here, hose, we see rows down here again. The one item I would like to flag is that using these wildcards right now are not completely aligned with these indexes. So if we do a title search for this question mark OSE, we may still see some claimants that are coming into your search results. That's something the team is aware of. And we are working on making sure that those search results align with the indices that you select. So for right now, the keyword anywhere within the record is the best place to use these special wildcards. So now moving on to some of the frequently asked questions that we've seen in our survey. Why can't I see the copyright protected material? I believe there is a small blurb on our homepage about what to expect to see in the copyright public record system. But the records are available for inspection in person at our records research and certification group if you'd like to come see those materials that are associated with the copyright registration. We don't provide those online through the copyright public record system, but you can make an appointment to visit the office in person to make those inspections. Some of the items are stored offsite, so we do recommend making an appointment ahead of time to ensure that the materials are available for your visit. And I believe there should be a link in the chat for our records research and certification group and how to make an appointment to view those materials. We've seen people ask why all their works or registrations are not grouped together. So we did talk briefly about the name directory. All of the names that are indexed as the applications come in are indexed in the same way they're submitted. So if you have multiple copyright claims, and on the first claim, you indicate that the claimant's name is Susan Smith, and on a subsequent claim, you indicate that the claimant's name is Sue Smith, those will be indexed as they've been submitted, and so they will not be aligned, although they will be owned by the same person. So you'll have to know that there may be variance in spellings or in the ways that the names were indexed in the office. And lastly, why don't I see the certificate for my registration? So we do display registration certificate previews after about 2007. There is a note about that on the Copyright Public Record System homepage. So some are available for preview online if they are after 2007. For anything before that, you can request, again, assistance from the Records Research and Certification Group. And just a little bit more about our survey. So I think we've seen well over 1,000 survey responses since the transition in June, over 400 both in July and August, and the September numbers are counting and growing, I think, as we speak. Most people seem to still be relatively satisfied with the copyright public record system, so we're happy to hear that. We are aware that we have seen a spike in error loading search results messages The team's been working to balance the number of requests to ensure that everyone is able to search and retrieve records. So we do know that that was an issue for a couple of days in the past, and we believe we've addressed it most of the way, but we're continuing to work on it to ensure that everyone has the best possible experience. We did have requests for bringing back the all of these search, which we think having the and functionality in the simple search for your search terms will accomplish. But again, we're always happy to hear more feedback through the survey or through the Q&A panel here during this Zoom webinar. Another feature that we've heard people asking for is a sticky option for filters, dates, and sorting. And what I mean by that is the ability to have the same set of filters, be it some of the facets for the types of registrations, or maybe the dates, to have those be the same throughout multiple searches within a session. Other people have asked to be able to have a consistent experience with the results per page or the way that their results are sorted. We think all of those ideas fit really well into the core ideas of the enterprise copyright system, making sure that you have a consistent and user-based experience. So those are options that we are investigating right now and will hopefully be able to make some progress on in some of our upcoming releases. And lastly, we've heard some requests about bulk download or the ability to download more than 100 records at a time, since that's the current limit of the amount of records you can select. That's something the office is taking under consideration, and we definitely hear the asks from the public about that. So we do, as Denise mentioned, we really value your input and your attendance here at the webinar to help us improve the copyright public record system. This winds up my portion of the presentation, and I'll hand it over now to my colleague, George Tironi, to help us with the Q&A portion.
Thanks very much, Denise and Sean. And hello, my name is George Tironi. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Public Information and Education here in the Copyright Office. We'll now start a question and answer part of the program. And as a reminder, you can submit relevant questions about the public records system by selecting the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but we may not be able to answer all the questions that you submitted today. If you have questions on other copyright-related topics, you can always submit general questions through our help form, which we will drop into the chat. We have a question here, Sean, about looking for titles within a group registration, for example, a GRAM, which is a group registration of an album of music. Is there a way to do that?
So similar to the titles of works that we added to the title search index, as long as that information has been captured by the ECO claim system and been brought over into CPRS, we should be able to search for those under titles as long as they're listed out as an individual title. If that's something that the questioner is not seeing at the moment, we can definitely look into it to ensure that that's included.
Great. Our next question has to do with a duration of copyright. So is there an indication of when the copyright expires, when a work falls into the public domain? Is that visible in the system, or are there other ways to determine that?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not an expert in duration in public domain. I can tell you that we do provide the registration date, and I know that the copyright laws have changed over time depending on when the copyright was submitted, and I think there may be also some renewal options in there. I'm not sure if that's something that you'd care to provide a little bit more context to than I might be able to at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And we're putting that in the chat. We have a great circular that explains duration of copyright. And Sean, as you mentioned, that's changed over time. So sometimes it can get a little complicated and you have to look at the date of copyright registration to see what duration applies to that particular work. So check out that circular. It has a lot of information in there so you can investigate when a work is likely to fall into the public domain. Another question here. You mentioned both registration and recordation. Are those different kinds of files? How are they the same or how are they different? What's the difference between those two?
Sure. I know that the office has a fantastic video in our Learning Engine series about the differences between registration and recordation. I think the really high level overview is that registration is a claim to copyright, whereas recordation is about transferring the ownership of that copyright. And I think the video does a far better job of explaining the nuances than I could in the time we have allotted today. So I may leave it there and hope that we can get a link to that video into the chat for our attendees.
Very good. Thank you. Um, Here's a question you talked about for somebody just starting out using this system. Which of the search options is the easiest and most comprehensive? Maybe those are different. Uh, where should people start?
Yeah, I mean, I think I may have mentioned this earlier. I always suggest starting with the keyword simple search. It's the first thing that you see when you get to the Copyright Public Record System homepage. We tried to design it to be as comprehensive an experience so that very similar to using any of the popular internet search engines, right? So that you can put in any of the terms that you think may be relevant. The system will give you those results. And then if you have additional information, you can use some of the date filters to refine your results. You can use some of the facets that we have on the sides of our search results page, or you can use some of the sorting tools that we have to be able to help you find the record that you're looking for.
Thank you. We have a question about APIs, and APIs are ways that different systems can connect with one another. And is there a way that people can connect using an API if they're a researcher or a third-party organization to the system?
So our system does run on an API right now, but we are not yet making a dedicated search API available to the public. We know that we've heard that there is demand for that, and we are aware. It's a matter of making sure that we release it in a responsible way so that we can provide those services and not impact the main search function for all of our users at the same time.
Great, thank you. Uh, Back to the public domain, lots of interest in that. If a work has fallen into the public domain, meaning its duration has expired, will that still be visible in the public record system?
So we do maintain the public record information as it was submitted about the claims themselves, or in the case of recorded documents, the transfers of copyright ownership. But as far as I know, we don't update them based on any duration information. I think that may be up to the end user to determine whether or not the duration of a copyright still exists.
Right. Okay, great. Well, for older works, how far back does the system go as far as older works displayed within the copyright public record system?
That's a great question, and one of the fantastic features of our copyright public record system. So we do now have card catalog application records that go back about as far as 1890, and those do go up through 1945. There is a bit of a gap between 1945 and 1977 that is kind of filled in by some other resources that we have within the Copyright Office and at the library. But if you're looking for records before 1945, there are over, I believe, 4 million card catalog records now available in the Copyright Public Record System. You can search the metadata, so the titles, the author names, the registration numbers, and you can also see those cards as well, which I think we've covered in previous webinars if anyone wants to go back and look, or if you want to go to the public record system right now and do a search, you can most likely find some card catalog images to page through as well as the associated metadata.
All right, great. I see here there's a question about announcing new releases and changes. And I think I can answer this and say, keep in touch with us at copyright.gov. We're going to drop some links where you can subscribe to social media, to our newsletter, and we make announcements like that there. And there are also other ways to keep in touch. What are some other ways to keep in touch, John?
Well, I think the Newsnet is also a great way to follow developments in copyright. Occasionally, we have a large enough announcement of the copyright public record system that makes it into a Newsnet. But people can also email us at publicrecords@copyright.gov if there are specific questions that they have about the copyright public record system or the records that it contains. We're always happy to receive emails there, as well as looking at any feedback that they want to provide to us through our survey that I think you saw popped up once or twice in our demo.
Okay, great. Here's a good question. What if I'm looking at a record and I think there might be a mistake there? How can I correct a record that I see in the copyright public record system?
Sure. I think we may have just pasted a link to the help page on copyright.gov. I believe that's the best place of entry to get you to the right person to help you figure out if there's a correction that's required in the public records, and anyone who's receiving your records through, or request rather, through that page will make sure that that information gets to us in a timely manner.
Great, thank you. Here's a good question. Can I find records of patents and trademarks in the copyright public record system?
Patent and trademarks is it's slightly different than copyright, and they do have their own individual search systems. I believe we do have some much older historic records that may have some old patent labels, but if you're really looking for modern patent and trademark registrations, you'll probably want to look for those over at the Patent and Trademark Office. I believe they have two search engines, one for trademarks and one for patents, and those are more your logos and that sort of thing, as opposed to our copywriting the expression of creativity in a fixed form that we do here at the Copyright Office.
Great. We will make sure people have the links to those as well so they can check that out. Here's a good question. Can I search for records of copyright registrations that may contain AI-generated materials?
I'm sure that's a popular question these days, George. So while we do not have a specific way to search for materials that have been copyrighted that include any artificial intelligence, I do know that the Registration Policy and Programs Office issued some guidance about how to indicate that artificial intelligence may have been a part of a registration claim, and how to make sure that that part is not included in their copyright claim. We do have an advanced search feature on the copyright public record system that allows you to search the material excluded field. And I will say that there's quite a lot of information that can go into that field. So if you search for Shakespeare, or perhaps the Bible or any other really popular work, you'd find many copyright claims that are excluding that original work from their copyright claim from the material that they submitted. So I believe if people are following registration's guidance when they submit those claims, you may be able to find that information there.
Okay, super. This database is great. How up to date is it? When somebody registers their work, how long does it take until it gets into the system?
That's a great question. So I think right now it's about 24 hours after a claim is approved until it shows up here in the copyright public record system. For the people who are looking for those certificate previews, that usually takes another 4 or 5 days. So if you have received an indication that your claim has been approved for copyright, you should be able to find it in the copyright public record system less than 24 hours after you receive that notice.
Wonderful, that's great. Another question. What about people who use nicknames or different variations of names? Do you have some tips on how to search for those in the system?
Sure. we do have a lot of people who register a claim with a pseudonym, and oftentimes those are indicated in our records. What you'll also find is the names that have been included on a claim will usually be listed at the bottom of the record. And you may find a pseudonym there, you may find an alternate spelling. And so any of those links will take you to the name directory where you can see the other records associated with those names. So it is a little bit of a treasure hunt. And there again, we index those names as they come in on the applications. So part of that consistent experience may be based off of the consistency of the submissions, but checking the names at the bottom of any of the detailed record views are a great way to track down alternate spellings of an individual that you may be looking for their works.
Hey, that's great. There is a special provision for works that are likely to be infringed where people can pre-register their works. Is there a way to search for works that are pre-registered in the system?
Yes, so we do have a pre-registration facet and filter. So if you are performing that asterisk search that I showed you, which brings back all the results from the database, and look over on the right-hand side, you should see, I believe it is a class for pre-registrations. And selecting that filter will bring up all the pre-registrations that we have. I'm seeing a little over 14,000 of those records in the current database at the moment.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We've really learned a lot today, and it's really wonderful how many new features have been added just in the past couple of months, and I know that there are more being added as we continue. I believe that's all the time we have for today, and that will conclude our webinar. I encourage everyone to use the search system and its new features and to find yourself in copyright. When you sign out of the session, we encourage you to take part in a brief survey regarding your experience. We use this to improve our webinar program, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. And again, if you have further questions or need more information, you can see the link to our contact form page at copyright.gov/help. And we're putting that in the chat as well. There are a lot of other ways you can engage with us with our Newsnet, our blog, events, social media. Go to copyright.gov/subscribe so you can keep apprised of all the activities we're involved with and the news straight from the Copyright Office. We'll be posting the recording of today's webinar on our event page soon, so please keep an eye out for that. All of the links to the various web resources that we shared in the chat today will be available on our event page when the recording goes live. Thank you so much for your participation today, and we hope you join us again for future Copyright Office events.